And it's important for you to listen to these talks more than one time. And if you do, what you will find out is that every time you listen to it, you hear more, right? Because the talks have different levels of understanding involved in them. And until in the beginning when you hear it, there may be aspects of what I talk about that are confusing, that just doesn't make any sense to you given the conditioning that you're in. And so you have to listen over and over again, and as you listen over and over again, you start to learn a new way of understanding what you are and what's real. Just like when you were a kid in elementary school, right? Repetition. Every day they kept repeating the times tables, repeating the alphabet, having you repeat practicing writing and doing simple math. The same thing is true here, because this is a radically different reality than the one that people ordinarily experience. And so it takes some time for you to get your feet wet and start to understand this. I had one guy, in fact it was your husband I was talking to the other night, and he said, when I first came to the class, I thought, it's interesting, but the guy keeps contradicting himself, and some things he says don't make any sense to me at all. But he was very interested in the possibility that I was pointing to and talking about, right? And that was several years ago, and he's been coming to the class pretty regularly ever since. So my suggestion to you is, if there's something that you hear in what I'm talking about here, if there's some possibility here, if you're really interested in this possibility of discovering that you're always happy, you're always satisfied, you're always at peace when you're being what you actually are, if that's an interesting idea to you, something that's attractive to you, then you may use that attraction and that motivation to start to practice meditation on a consistent basis, just the way we practiced it. Right? That's a large order for a lot of people, because most of our lives are repetitive patterns. You get up in the morning and go through the same pattern and go to sleep and get up in the morning. Right? To do anything different in that pattern can be challenging, right? So what I recommend to people is just start coming to this class. If you come to this class is 3 times a week. If you come to this class 3 times a week, that'll already be a pattern, right? And if you start practicing 3 times a week when you come to this class, then you just fill in the gaps, that's all, right? A lot of people start to become a seeker and start to practice meditation when they have a significant shock in their life, you know? It's often the case when somebody gets a serious diagnosis, or somebody close to you dies, or you go through a divorce. Some difficult, unexpected situation is a shock to your patterns, right? It knocks you out of your patterns, right? And when people get knocked out of their patterns, it's like they're disoriented, right? And they feel desperate. They're trying to find some place to stand, somewhere to be. And so that's when they become interested in this. But don't wait till then, you know. Don't wait until you're cornered by life before you start to entertain this possibility. Allow yourself to give it serious consideration now, you know, so that you can get some practice in before the shit hits the fan. Because it will, for all of us. You know, one of the things the Buddha, one of the teachers about this, said is that we will all be subject to the same guaranteed things: sickness, old age, and death. Nobody in this room will escape that experience. And between now and then, life is unpredictable, right? So we live every day of our lives with the assumption that everything's fine, right? Until what happens demonstrates to us that that's not true. Life is unpredictable. Anything can happen at any time, right? So if you're practicing meditation, you can allow yourself to begin to experience a life that's worth living. I think it was Plato that said an unexamined life is not worth living, right? So this is an opportunity to examine life, you know, to see, what is this? I mean, don't you think it's an interesting fact? Don't you think it's an interesting fact that almost all of the 8 billion plus human beings on the planet, right, are born into this world, are born into this situation that's already going on when you show up, right? Are born into this, right? And they just take on the stupidity and ignorance of the rest of the herd. Without questioning it at all, you know, because, you know, like you were like me when I was a little kid, I thought all the adults knew everything, right? It was very disappointing to grow up and find out how stupid people were, and that the adults don't know much about anything, right? So this is an opportunity for you to get yourself a good grounded place to be in your life, meaning that you ask the two most important questions that a human being can ask. What am I and what is this? Right? Don't you think those are valid questions? You know, most people don't think they're valid questions. Most people walking around already know the answers, so they're not seeking answers to those questions. And if the answers they have are wrong, too bad. They just keep living with those answers, trying to get it to work, right? Living thinking I am this body, living thinking I am this personality, living thinking I am my name, I am my characteristics as a person, right? That's true, that's what I am, that's the end of that question. And then the other question, what is this? Well, when I went to school, they told me this is the planet Earth, you know, that's up, this is down, you know, and so you learn all the pieces, right? All the particular aspects of the information about what this is. And once you learn enough about that, you say, okay, I know where I'm at and I know who I am. But how come my life doesn't work? Now, if I know what I am and I know where I'm at, then how come I can't apply that and get this situation that I find myself in to deliver the goods? See, one of the things about this is because we're an incomplete version of ourselves, because the personality is a very limited form of what we actually are, right? It doesn't allow for us to experience what's available in terms of the natural state, which is to be happy, satisfied, and at peace. And instead of that, we come into a situation, right, in which there's time and space and things are happening, right? And we identify with what's happening all the time, right? We identify with what's happening all the time in our minds and in the world, right? And so we're living a life that is based on the operation of circumstances producing the experience that we're lacking. Circumstances produce the experience that we're lacking, right? If the circumstances are good, I feel happy. I think I feel happy, but the truth about that is not really happiness, it's gratification. When you get what you want, there's this positive experience called gratification, right? But since we're never happy, that's the closest we get to it, we'll call that happy. I'm gratified and I'm happy, right? And when the circumstances aren't what we want them to be, I am miserable, I'm not happy, I'm disappointed, I'm annoyed, I'm upset, you know, I'm intolerant, you know how you are, like that. When things are going your way, you know, and people who you love try to talk to you and, you know, they're bothering you. They're bothering you because you're focused on the fact that you're upset. And the upset that you're experiencing is a function of things not being the way you want them to be. You have expectations that keep getting unfulfilled, right? If you pay attention when you wake up in the morning and just follow through the day of how many times things happen that are upsetting for you, and every time that happens, notice that you expected it to be different. That's why you're upset, right? That's called insanity. That's called neurosis, right? And so if you want to go sane, you have to come out of that way of dealing with reality, right? You have to stop being dependent on situations to have a quality of life. You have to stop being dependent on situations in order to experience well-being. And this is not religion. I mean, if you think that I'm saying something that's religion, then look up Richie Davidson. He's a neuroscientist that has been studying the effects of meditation on the brain for 20 years, right? And he wrote a book with another neuroscientist that's available that can give you all the background information on the brain science that shows that this is not religion. If you practice meditation, your brain will change in dramatic and profound ways. And as your brain changes, the thinking changes. And as the thinking changes, the emotion changes. And as the thinking and the emotion changes, the experience you're having of your life changes. And that's why if you look at somebody that's been practicing meditation for 20 years, right, and you see how content they appear, how grounded they are, right, how peaceful they are, right, they're living in a state of being instead of a personality. They're experiencing the awareness as their true nature, right? And they've made the transition from being a thinking being to a being that is experiencing the truth, which is fulfilling, which is already fulfilled, which is already satisfied and already at peace. And as you gradually practice moving your attention away from the thinking activity, from the mental state, to this being aware, you're being now instead of thinking, being aware of the body to work. And then you come to realize the most meaningful meaningful thing you were doing in your life was your work, but that's gone. So now you have to try and play golf.